Okay, maybe we should get started. I was tempted to give a couple more minutes since we are West Coast, or west half of the US, and rolling into Asia. I know that those of us in California time zone sometimes move a little slower, at least stroll a little slower. But let's go ahead and we can do a couple of housekeeping things. If you saw the note that you want to put your screen in side-by-side mode, hit viewing options at the top and it'll let you do that. That way you can see the presenters presenting and the slides at the same time, and that'll help you a bit. My name is Tracy Geist. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at EditShare. And, you know, I just wanted to really say good afternoon, good evening to the people in the western half of the US. Good morning to those of us, our friends that are across Asia. If we have anybody that's still in Europe or the East Coast, I applaud your ability to stay awake and join us. We'll try to keep it lively. I have with me today Stephen Tallamy, who's our Chief Technology Officer, and Andy Liebman, who's our Chief Strategy Officer. And they're going to be going through the presentation, doing some demos. We have, you know, a variety of topics that, you know, main topic that we want to cover around remote production. But really, this is kind of the first in a series of webinars that EditShare is going to put together. We'll be hosting them on a regular basis, a variety of topics, some customer and partner guests, some special speakers. We have a kind of a list of topics that we'd like to cover, but when we get all through this and the Q&A and everything, we're going to give you guys a little survey, give you some opportunities after this session to give us some feedback, and also let us give us some ideas of things that you'd like to see us cover instead. I mean, Stephen's going to get into this a little bit, but I would say, I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm thankful for technology at the moment. One, so that we can kind of gather all together and do these kinds of things. But two, if we have to all work from home and shelter at home and all of the other options, that we can still spend time together. I can't imagine trying to herd my children without having Zoom at work, Zoom at school, Zoom at cocktail hour, Zoom at dinner, so that we can spend time with friends. And especially today, in that my kids got news that they don't go back to school until May 2nd. So I'm sure they're trying to figure out what they're going to do for the next 6 weeks of their lives without any friends in the house. But we're going to make it through, and I think it just gives us an opportunity to reflect and figure out as a society how we kind of engage and do that better. But so without further ado, let's get started. Stephen's gonna kind of take us through an overview of what we're gonna cover today, and he and Andy are gonna just kind of talk through a bunch of scenarios, some examples. We do have a Q&A forum that is posted kind of at the bottom of your screen. So if you'd like to put questions in there at any point in time, we're gonna gather them up during the course of the conversation. And then at the end, we'll pause and do a bit of Q&A. It does have an upvote in there, so thumbs up or high five or something like that. And so if you see somebody else's question and that's something that you want to talk about too, just keep voting it up so that we get it to the top of the queue and make sure that we address it. All of these questions, all of the Q&A will package up and get you an FAQ later. So please understand that all your questions will get answered, but we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So Stephen, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Just going to say cheers to Justin, who's drinking his beer out of his travel mug. Mine's just water. I didn't really think this through. I should have got myself a beer. It's quite late here in the UK. But yeah, cheers to that. Oh, very nice.
I didn't see that Stephen has been up since the crack of dawn, not to interrupt him, but he has been up early and is staying up late. So he's in the UK, and Andy is on the East Coast. So cheers to both of them. We're bookending the days today. So.
But this is an important topic, and we really wanted to spend the time talking about it. I mean, there is a lot of challenges out there, and Tracy talked about a bunch of them. But these challenges are not just impacting, you know, our home lives; they're impacting our work lives. And you know, a number of us within EditShare, we're all now remote. We're all working remotely from the offices. We had great support from our IT teams to make sure that we could get connected back into our offices. We have a whole lot of our systems already in the cloud and online. So for us, we've adapted to that. We've had some great meetings around this, but we know that there are even more challenges, I would say, in terms of doing this for some of the workflows involved in media entertainment for creatives who are working where a lot of their media is not so easy to access. It's very large files. It's a lot harder to manage and move things around. Maybe you don't have all the equipment at home that you would need to do all of your jobs. So there's some really big challenges ahead of people working in the creative industry. And what we want to do is see if we can help out in that way with some of EditShare's technologies and some of the experience that we've had working in these different types of environments. And really to help deal with that challenge, we need to start thinking differently, and that's what we've started to do ever since we started hearing about these challenges. We've been working very closely with some colleagues in China who've been working in cloud environments. They're trying to get their production still going despite some of the challenges, and they saw a lot of this earlier on. We're now seeing this as a wave throughout the world. In fact, China seems to be coming a bit more online now, so it's great news there. But we found that is one thing that we're starting to think differently, is to really speed up the adoption of cloud technologies that make it easier for people to do these types of remote workflows. So we'll talk a bit about that. There are also some things that we've already got in place. We've had them for a long time in the toolbox that you can already use today, maybe on your existing systems. If you're an EditShare customer, you have some of these technologies, but we'll also talk about how you can get your hands on them, even if you're not an existing EditShare customer. And speaking kind of working remotely, that's actually really comes from the very beginning of EditShare. We've got Andy who's on the line, but he's also a younger version of him, looking very happy, poking his head out of this tent here. This was one of the productions that Andy was involved in, that really spurred some of the ideas behind how EditShare technology came about. And so maybe I think I'll hand to you, Andy, to kind of give a bit of an overview of what was the production about, how was, what were the challenges you were facing in that kind of remote situation, and maybe talk about how does that kind of apply to both EditShare's DNA, but also some of the things we're seeing in our current challenging environments.
Well, Stephen, I think many people know a lot about the history of EditShare, but for those who don't, before founding EditShare in 2004, I spent the previous 22 years being a film director, producer, editor. And in the year 2000 and 2001, I was working on a documentary series. It was really a reality show up in the Canadian Arctic. It was about as far north as you can go. There's no more land if you go any farther north. And there were a group of people from NASA and the Mars Society simulating a human mission to Mars. And we were producing this series in a place that looked a lot like Mars and beaming our shows back to Bethesda, Maryland, where they were being aired. And of course, this is about as remote of workflow as you can get. But what was probably our biggest challenge is that we were 8 or 9 people each of those years working out of tents in sub-freezing temperatures. And what would happen every day is somebody would go out and shoot something exciting with a camera, with a videotape, and then they'd come back and we would digitize it onto one FireWire drive, and then we would spend hours copying it onto 5 other FireWire drives because everybody needed a copy of that because there was something on every tape for everybody. So, the need to collaborate was something that I lived, really strongly in a place where I couldn't. And that was kind of the beginnings of EditShare, because I've decided, I thought there ought to be a better way to fix this problem. And as you say on the slide here, it's kind of our DNA to solve problems, to kind of figure out a way around things. And here in the current situation we're all living in the world, EditShare is thinking really hard about how our customers can solve problems, how they can get their work done remotely.
And you've spoken to quite a few customers since the whole of this current crisis started off. What are the kind of core things that we're hearing from customers that are really a problem for them? What's fundamentally an issue for them at this time?
Well, when people went home to have to work from home, it basically broke most of the workflows that they were accustomed to, because they went home with their laptops, but all of their content was still in the office. And especially for EditShare customers that had all the content on a big shared server, right? Which this is the way most people work today. You know, there's a big gap between where all the materials are you need to work with and where your computer is. So that's a fundamental problem. How do I get my stuff to keep getting my project done? The other fundamental problem that everybody's facing is that we're an industry that's really driven by deadlines. Whether you're making advertisements or documentaries or news pieces or basically no matter what you're making, you know, there are tight deadlines. And when you don't deliver your shows on time, you often get fined. So, you know, maybe we're going to be getting out of some of those fines during this crisis, but everybody is really nervous and pulling their hair out, trying to think, how can I keep getting my work done? That's what's on everybody's mind.
Yeah, definitely challenging times. I imagine this was some challenging times actually out in these cold tents. I don't really fancy it myself, although I've now figured out where the orange for the the EditShare logos and everything. It's your tent really, isn't it?
Always loved orange.
That's fantastic. So what I want to walk through, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some stuff, but we're going to show you these things. We don't want to just kind of bore you with slides. We really want you to see these solutions hands-on. And so we've got 4 business continuity solutions that we're going to walk through today. There are, I'm sure, a number of other workflows that we could talk about, but these are 4 that we picked that we could show you today through this webinar. And so I will talk through them, and then Andy will show you them for real. So the 4 solutions, I'll talk them briefly, and then we'll get into each one in a bit more detail. The first one is a remote desktop solution into your facility. So this is getting back a remote view back into your own existing offices. So there's some technology we'll show you that will allow you to reuse your existing facility, but remotely. The second one is about using a low resolution proxy workflow, so you can download your assets from your existing system and then start editing them in one of your favorite NLEs. So we love to work with, you know, all of the different editing solutions out of there: Premiere Pro, Media Composer, Final Cut. All of these different technologies are all things that EditShare have supported for a long time. So we'll show you a little bit about the way in which we can do that very simple sort of download proxy workflow. The third option is actually using our own NLE, which has built-in proxy editing. So Flow Story, which is part of our Flow product, allows you to do this seamlessly without even knowing that you're dealing with proxies. And then finally, I'd like to talk about the full editing workflow that we have in the cloud. So this is something we've been doing for a while, an entire environment hosted in a cloud. So that's both the editing environment, or the storage environment, and the media asset management, all hosted in a cloud environment. And there may be different reasons why you might pick each of these different solutions. So we definitely would like to walk you through, you know, so you can pick and choose maybe some of these that will work for you. But definitely there's Q&A there. If you think of some more things there, we'd love to hear how you're managing to keep your businesses going through this time. So let's start with the remote desktop solution. And this is a relatively straightforward solution to a problem. Effectively here, we've got a number of technologies that we can use to connect into a remote workstation. And remote desktoping technologies have been around for a long time, but often they haven't really had the quality that you need to be able to do a full editing experience. They just don't have the throughput, they don't have the responsiveness. But there have been some new technologies over the last few years that have really become very popular for these. And we've partnered with both Teradici and NiceDCV to provide some solutions to our customers who've got a system back at base that they want to go and connect into. So I'll hand over to you, Andy, and you can kind of show these solutions in action.
Great, Stephen. So hopefully you all see my screen now.
Looks
so
great.
So, I'm sure most of us have some experience with a remote desktop. We've used TeamViewer, we've used VNC, we've used our Microsoft Remote Desktop, many tools out there. And we're talking about something totally different. And these are the two applications that Stephen just referred to, Teradici, which is sometimes called PC over IP, PC, I don't know how, that's a weird acronym, and then DCV. That's also hard to say. I don't know, there's something about remote desktop names that can be hard to say. But these are really different. Unlike those other desktops that you might be used to, these are designed to be able to transmit 30 frames per second of video or more, and use very little data to do that. And give you an experience that's just like you're sitting in front of your workstation at the office. And this is a really fantastic experience. So I'm just going to launch in and show you one. I'm connected to my office here, and I have Adobe Premiere running. This is through a remote desktop, and I can scroll through my sequence quite easily and kind of hop to any place in the sequence I want and have an experience that's just like I'm sitting in my office. And this is the kind of thing that we've done experiments, we've done work ourselves, and you really can't tell the difference. It's got the sound, it's got the video, and soon these tools are actually going to have things like Dolby 5.1 sound. I know they're working on that. You can do a reasonable color correction over them. You can do multi-monitors. So it's a whole new ballgame for remote desktops. So I'm not much more to say about that other than, you can connect to, these tools specifically work best with Windows workstations. So you install a server application on the Windows workstation. This is back in my office. I have a server application here. And then on my, I happen to be running a Mac, and I'm using the Mac client to connect to my office. You could also use a Windows client. You can connect remotely to a Linux workstation as well. And we're also currently looking at some other options to connect to Macs. In the first webinar we did earlier today, we had some suggestions from some of the attendees, and we actually tried it out, and they work pretty well. So I think we'll have some good news to report about being able to support pretty much any workstation and any NLE. And we've done work with Resolve, with Lightworks, with Media Composer, got them all running on this workstation, and we'll show you some of that later. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Stephen.
That's great, Andy. So that's a pretty straightforward thing, but in this case, you're still reusing the facility that you have. You've got all of your storage. You're not really moving assets around. You're remote desktoping into a workstation and just reusing that hardware. Now, there are going to be some challenges, maybe getting these things set up, particularly if you have a large number of people wanting to work on the workstation, on workstations remotely, if you don't have a large amount of incoming bandwidth into your facility. So that could be one challenge. But in terms of setting these things up, relatively straightforward for you to set them up in terms of the security. Either your IT can open up a particular port and allow you direct access through, or you can use VPN technology over the top of these, and that works pretty well as long as you've got sufficient VPN. So that's your remote.
Yeah, and I might just add that when you're working remotely like that, it's really like you've put yourself back in your office. So even though you're sitting at home, if you've got your audio, your music library in the office, your graphics, you've got certain workflows where you need certain tools, it's all right there.
Yep, exactly, and that's real-time video scrubbing, any of those kinds of things. That's all available through this. So let's talk about the second of these two solutions, and this is a solution for situations where you maybe don't have the bandwidth to get into your, to run a lot of these remote desktop solutions into your facility, or perhaps you're using maybe Mac and it's not as easy for you to use. Again, we're going to look at some of the technologies in maybe an upcoming webinar once we've given them a bit more of a thorough test there. So how this works is when you're using the Flow product from EditShare, it automatically generates proxy files, so a low resolution version of those files as they're coming from your storage system. And these can be exposed into Airflow, which is our web-based media asset management tool. So what you can easily do is download those files from Airflow, and then you can go ahead and edit just using them with those proxy files. When you're done, and of course that editing could be Premiere Pro, Resolve, all of these editing solutions we've got up on screen, and probably some more, but there's some really good workflows for each of these to allow you to do this. When you're finished, you can take the sequences that you've done, your projects, send them back to base, and then conform them back at base with the main media, so with the high resolution media. And that's the important part, is that the rendering still can happen back at base where the high resolution media actually is. And so, Andy, I think you're going to give us a quick walkthrough of this, and then maybe also you'll touch on how we're making Flow available to anybody during this time.
Yes. Okay. So as Stephen mentioned, he talked about Airflow, and this is the Airflow web client, and I'm just going to go log in here. Again, I'm connecting to my office, and hopefully I'm going to log in. There we go. Okay, and just to remind everybody what Flow's all about, Flow is our media management tool that is allows you to see all your content, to browse it, to search for it, to log it, to tag it, to organize it, and really to access it from anywhere in the world through a web browser. So I can see the content for different projects or different workspaces I have in my office. This is nice stock footage from Mammoth. And so let's just say I'm working on a project at home, and I want to bring material to me so that I can start editing it. So I might make a new project, and I'm just going to call this webinar evening. And I can then begin to browse the content that I have. I can play it to see whether it's something that I want. I could be putting markers on it. I could be making subclips or log entries. I could be creating all sorts of useful metadata, but in this case, I just want to select the clips that I want to work on at home. So I can just pull the clips that I'm interested in over into my folder. Just take a couple more. And love this bear. And I can now click on the folder, and if I want to select all the clips, I can then select to download the proxies. Now, my administrator has given me permission to download the proxies. Not everybody necessarily has that, but I do. And so I'm just going to run through all of them and download them one at a time. There are some tools you can use to download them more efficiently, but I'm just using this tonight. And so now that they're downloaded, if I go to my desktop, here are the files that I've just downloaded. And you can see it didn't take very long. And they're really small files. I mean, they're like a megabyte in size. They're very compact H.264 files. And if I come over to Premiere and go to import them, they'll come into my project, and I can drag them to my timeline, and I can begin to do an edit. Now, I'm not going to do a very complicated edit because nobody really has time for that tonight, but I'll just do a couple of things. I'm just going to create a transition here, just so that I can show you how this workflow works. So this is with my low resolution. This is with my low resolution H.264 proxy. There I've got my dissolve. And now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the project. And what I would do in this sort of workflow is I would now copy that project maybe to a Google Drive, and so that I can access it someplace else. So here's my project, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. Let's just say this was a Google Drive that I could access at the office. And now if I connect back to the office again, where all my high-res material is, which if I go in the right direction here, here I am back in the office, and I'm going to close that project and I'm open up a new one. And there's the project that I just made. So let's just say it was in Google Drive. I have a shared drive between my house and my office, so that's how I did it. And I open up the project, and of course it's going to tell me that all the clips are offline because I don't have my proxy files at the office. They were only at my house. But I'm going to do a relink based on the file name, and I've unselected the file extension because they do have a different extension. And I'm going to locate the media where I know it is and search for it. And there it is. And I'm going to say OK to everything. And now I have relinked to all of the high-res media. There it is. And including the dissolve. So very simple workflow, and very easy to very easy to work with not only Premiere Pro, but also other applications such as Lightworks, Resolve, Final Cut Pro 10, even Avid. I'm going to say something specific about Media Composer. So this is so this is how you would do this with Media Composer. So this is a different application of Flow. This is called Flow Browse, and you can see I can open my clips here, and if I pick a number of clips here and download the proxies here, it gives me the option to use the clip name or the original name. And the original name is actually it's a unique identifier for the proxy file. You can see those here. And so that's what we want to use in this workflow. And when we move over to Media Composer and bring clips into Media Composer, the high-res clips will have a special field called the proxy file unique identifier. And that's how we are able to do a relinking between the proxy files and the high resolution files. We'd be happy to explain these workflows in greater details, but just want to let you all know that this is possible. So with Flow proxies, we can support just about any NLE. Stephen, you got any questions?
That's right. Also, I think there was a question about tools in the browser that can help you download very large numbers of files if you've got a lot in that Airflow screen. What sort of tools have you used in the past for that sort of thing, Andy? So
for Firefox, there was a tool called something like Down Them All, and they're just sort of mass file downloaders. I tried to install one for Chrome today, and I fought with one, and then I fought with the other, and then I just said I was going to do it this way.
And also you saw the download all option in the Flow Story client as well, which you could have used just as easily with Premiere as well as Avid. But I mean, the nice thing about the Airflow solution is there is no additional software. So on your local, the laptop or whatever you have in your home system, you don't need to add any more software. You can just connect over the web to the Airflow that's running back in your facility. Very easy for your IT teams to make a a hole in the firewall to allow you to get to that function. They can lock it down to a set of home IP addresses if they want to, but it's very easy for you to connect. Everything is being transferred securely all over HTTPS, so all of the transfer of the media is perfectly safe as it comes to your local desktop solutions as well. And when you're actually doing that, log back to home where you're doing the final step of taking the sequence and relinking that can happen over any remote desktop technology. So you don't necessarily need those Teradici clients or some of those. You could use any of your other remote desktop software that works with Mac, with PC, with Linux, whichever you're using. So those are all available to use. So I'm just going to go back. Oh, did you want to add something there, Dan?
I didn't hear if you said this, but you could also connect over the VPN to do this.
Yep. And so one of the big things that we want to remind customers of EditShare, and also people who are new to EditShare, is that through to July 1st, we've made Flow free for everyone. Okay, so the full version of Flow, if you have it, if you don't have it already, you can go and download it and make it available in your facility. That will work with EditShare systems, but also other storage solutions. So that is available. If you've already got it bundled in your system, then you're already good to go. I think, Andy, there's some things on a pre-EditShare 2020 system where the licensing was slightly different, but even in that way, we're going to make sure that everyone has it.
Yeah, so I can explain that. So yeah, many of our customers are still on EditShare 7. And in EditShare 7, we used to have a separate fee for each seat of Flow Story. Flow Story is included with Flow and EditShare in Flow 2020. So during this period of time, when we're trying to help everybody out, we're just providing Flow Story for EditShare 7 customers, the seats that you need. So not a problem. Shouldn't get in your way.
Great. And that will work with all of these different tools, different storages, and of course with all of EditShare's systems as well. So let's talk about the third of these solutions, and this is it's similar to the last solution, but this is using our Flow Story timeline editor. So this is kind of based on the Lightworks technology, but this has built into it all the functions for proxy editing support as well. So instead of where in the previous example you actually had to download those proxies them yourself and then manage the relinking, within Flow Story we've had this for a long time, that those proxy files stream directly into the Flow Story editing client. You can do all of your editing, and then all of the relinking can happen automatically as well. And then a little bit, as Andy showed with the Flow Browse tool, similarly with Flow Story, you could hand off these to Premiere Pro or a Media Composer to do maybe a final finish on them if you want to do some real additional craft editing in those tools. But there's a lot there. Just to make it simpler, we've taken a few things off the table in the workflow using Flow Story because of these streaming proxies. And probably best for you to show this, Andy.
Sure. So once again, I will share my desktop. And so this is the Flow Story login. I'm logging into a different Flow system. And I'm going to continue working on a project that I started earlier today. And so I'm in the middle of a timeline, and all of the editing I'm doing here with my timeline editor is with streaming proxy files. So what's different in this case is instead of having downloaded the proxies, I'm just streaming them directly out of the Office. And I have Flow tools here so that I can browse my spaces and see content that's there. I can, and so let's say I want to use this shot. I think maybe that shot was already in there. Let me look for another shot here. I'm going to look for some this Great Wall of China shot. That's what I want to use, and I want to go back to my edit, and I want to put it into my edit here. And when I play this, this is just the a streaming proxy. I have not downloaded it. And I can do trimming, I can do effects, everything I can do. I can add different layers, I can move audio tracks around. It's everything you could do with any other NLE with all the convenience of not having to download anything. Now, when I'm finished with a sequence, I have a lot of options for what I want to do with it. I could remote connect to my office and open up the same flow story sequence in the office. So when I'm right here, I can publish this back to Flow, and that'll move the metadata of my sequence. Basically, it's like everything that describes the sequence. It'll bring it back into the Flow database, and then I can open it up on a different workstation in the office. And if I do that, all I need to do is go to my media settings, video settings, and here I can just say, instead of using the lowest available resolution, I can select to use the highest. And that will automatically and instantaneously relink to the high res. And so, I don't need a good remote desktop to do that. I can have VNC or TeamViewer, anything like that. And all I basically trying to do under that circumstance is to get into the office where I can open up the sequence so that I can relink it and output it and render a flattened file. But there's another option too. If I have a good VPN connection, I can remotely mount my high resolution storage at home and do that same relinking. Maybe my connection isn't fast enough to actually do editing, but it's good enough to be able to read the files, to do the color correction, and to be able to render the flattened files. So it's not even necessary to remote back to the office. And I forgot to mention that with the relinking, the previous scenario I showed, you can also do that. So if you were editing in Premiere, instead of connecting to the office, you could remotely mount your storage and do the relinking there. And of course, not expecting to have a smooth editing experience. So, and finally, there's one other option for Flow Story. If you want to finish your project in another nonlinear editor, when you publish it back to Flow, well, that's making an AAF file that's going in the database, and you can bring that AAF file into Media Composer, into Resolve, into Premiere Pro, any other editor that accepts the AAF files, and you can continue to finish your sequence there. So Flow Story really offers you a lot of different options. That all clear, Steve?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Andy. So that was kind of like a third option where you've got a bunch of things built into Flow, and again, part of that offer includes Flow Story. So in terms of people having availability at no charge to use Flow, that includes the Flow Story experience. So this is another great option for people during this time to be able to use that tool without some of the overhead of some of the other solutions. So really now I wanted to talk about the fourth of these solutions, and this is one we've been working on for a while to enable a full workflow in the cloud. So this is the remote desktops in the cloud, also all the storage in the cloud, the media asset management in the cloud. And so some of those first ones, perhaps you don't necessarily have all the IT infrastructure to help you work in that environment. Sometimes it can be challenging to get VPN connections, to get access into your environments that you have set up already. It can be challenging from an IT perspective to get all of that right and working from home. So this one here, this environment, all of that is taken care of using cloud technologies. And we're partnering with Amazon Web Services to do this in the first instance. We're actually doing a number of cloud deployments, not just in Amazon Web Services around the world, but for this particular option, we've got a great solution with AWS that's fully automated. It sets up all of the workstations for you. It sets up all the permissions, the firewalling, all of those things to make it very easy for you to get straight on and doing your editing. Those virtual workstations, they've got full GPU support in them, good CPU, good memory, so video editing on them is going to be no problem at all. And with that, we've got the virtualized EditShare EFS cloud storage platform. So all the great storage throughput that you would expect from an EFS in the cloud, plus all of the tools around flow for media asset management, the airflow, all of those things, all hosted and managed in the cloud for you. So this can take a lot of burden off some of the sort of deployment options here for remote workflow. And I wanted to kind of talk about this in a bit more detail because it might seem like it's a science project. It certainly isn't. It's something that we've done for real with a number of customers, and I'm going to talk about one of them here. It's quite an advanced workflow that we did with Amazon Prime Video. So Amazon Prime Video were working on the ATP tournament for the tennis in Monte Carlo. That video, they wanted to be able to do remote highlights, so have video editors in a remote location creating highlights packages through a cloud platform. What they did here, we had the live video feeds being streamed back to London over an existing fiber optic cable back to London, where we placed an EditShare ingest system. And that ingest system was effectively converting those SDI inputs into file chunks. And what we used to get those file chunks into the cloud is a technology called Expedite. This is a file accelerator. It effectively takes your files and pumps them as fast as they possibly can across the bandwidth that you have available to another destination. There are a number of these technologies on the marketplace, and we found that Expedite worked really well, very fast, very reliable, and got those files into the cloud. Now, of course, this was a streamed live type of situation, but if you could imagine, you can use these same workflows if you've got a file-based workload as well. That was then sent into a data center for AWS based in Virginia. And so that's where we had the full virtualized EditShare file system, we had Flow, and we had the Windows workstations all running on the EC2 platform of AWS. The remote desktop then, so using the same technology that Andy showed at the beginning, using Teradici in this case, they were remote desktoping from Los Angeles back to Virginia, where their desktop. So their local workstations didn't have to be highly spec'd. They didn't have to have a lot available on them because actually the full power of the editing was happening in the cloud. And they had, just as Andy was experiencing there, a really, really good experience. They couldn't tell the difference. It was almost surreal to them that that thing was actually remote to them. It felt like it was right in front of them. They would do their editing and then create those packages back to be delivered to London. And to make that happen, there are a number of pieces of technology that are important. We've talked a bit about Teradici, but you also need to make sure you've got the high performance storage as well. It's all very well connecting to a remote desktop and having a great connection to that. But if the connection back to the storage is laggy, is slow, then you're going to have a not great experience in terms of a timeline edit. That's why the EFS, we've virtualized that. We've made sure that it's well tuned to work in a cloud environment. And so they were having that full experience. Once they were done, we would generate the proxy version of the final edit. And that was made available through the Airflow tool that we were seeing earlier for the production team back in London. So the directors, producers, they could then review it, make sure they were happy with that package. And if they accepted it, we had an automation task that then sent the original high resolution version of that content back to London, back over that Expedite connection. So this was a sophisticated workflow, but one that we managed to get working very well. But you can imagine there are different parts of this workflow that may be also applicable to you. And so I think I'll hand to Andy to show an example of this working on his local system.
Okay, so once again, you're looking at my Mac desktop, and just to add a little bit of, put a little meat to the bone of what Stephen was talking about in AWS. This is our AWS environment with all of our virtual machines and EC2 instances. Of course, that would be hidden from customers, but this is what's running behind it. And here's the Teradici remote desktop again. And I'm going to connect to one of those Windows workstations. See if I remembered the password correctly. There we go. And so this is quite a powerful workstation, and I actually have 3 different NLEs running on that same workstation. Just give it a second while it resizes. So here is that sports data here. Let me see if I can turn the sound down a little bit. It's a little overwhelming as I scroll through it. But you know, really smooth experience. And I can go high speed, no problem. And so this is how the editors in for the Amazon project were editing. This is actually one of their sequences. But we're not only running Premiere here, we're running DaVinci Resolve. And I've got this is actually 4K DPX content. And I just want you to take a look at one thing here. You know, if you look at our performance meter, you can see we're playing back like 7, you know, almost 7 megabits there. It's really, really pretty. Sorry, it's more than that. It's gigabits. I think I'm looking at the wrong one. I got the wrong one here, but anyway, this is maybe I'm looking at the wrong version of it. We can play back like 7, 8 megabits, and then finally I've got Media Composer here, and sorry, it's going to tell me I have to restart it, but I don't. And this is Ultra HD content, DNxHR, and again, also playing really well in Avid. This is like 1.2, 1.3 gigabits. So tremendous performance in the AWS environment, can support, you know, pretty much any application, and to give you the workflows that you need. And so just to remind everybody, these workstations are located in Virginia. I'm sitting in my home in Boston, connecting through Teradici, and the virtualized EFS storage is also in Virginia. So basically, I'm sitting in a very noisy data room, except it's very quiet here. How come?
So Andy, I guess one of the questions here is going to be, well, how do I get the media into the cloud? So maybe you could show us a little bit of the Expedat piece of this, because obviously if I've got a large amount of content, I need to get it into the cloud quite quickly so I can get on and edit it.
Yeah, so I've got the Expedat client, and it really, if you're familiar at all with an FTP client, it's really very similar. You have an Expedat server and Expedat clients, and you simply log in to the server. It's really fast, and I'm seeing all of the workspaces that I have, and I could pick one of these workspaces and say, I'm going to just send a whole folder of 8K files there, and off we go. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because I'll use up all my upload bandwidth, and the webinar probably would be pretty bad for my house. But Expedat will pretty much use up, unless you tell it not to, it'll pretty much use up as much bandwidth as it's got.
Excellent. So if you've got media locally or media on your existing systems back at home, you can send that easily into the cloud using tools such as Expedat. I guess if you've already got some of your media in a cloud, so if you've already been archiving your material, we have the Flow product, you know, will connect into S3, into Glacier, into a whole bunch of other cloud backup solutions as well. You could be restoring those, I assume, Andy, into the EFS system that was virtualized, pulling them from whatever archive that you may already have set up.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the Flow tools have a very good connection to all types of storage that could be in the cloud, and you can have workflows where you store content in object storage, and you bring back content as you need it to the higher performance storage, and equally important, as you bring content to the high performance storage, if you're uploading it to edit, you can then get it into object storage for long-term archiving. And Flow will have a proxy file of it for you to see what's there in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, why we've partnered with AWS, we've spent a lot of time making sure that we have an automated solution that we can make very easily available to our customers right now. There are options in other clouds that we can provide, but this is one that we can do very automatically. And you don't need to be an AWS expert as a customer. We can take care of all of the setup, creation of the full environment, securing it, and all of those things. So that's something that we can provide for our customers. You don't need to learn about cloud. It's effectively going to feel from your perspective as if you were just connecting into, you know, a remote desktop situation, but that remote desktop happened to be in the cloud.
So as a producer, I feel you know, really comfortable that we have some excellent solutions to be able to work from home at this period of time, right? It's pretty amazing.
It really is. I mean, and just let's recap those just really quickly. So we walked through the remote desktop solutions, allowing you to connect into your existing facility, your existing remote desktops. Then there was the download option, so downloading Flow, using Flow proxies, and then using those in your local editing workstation so that you have at home, and then sending them back to base for conforming. Then we have this more integrated solution that Flow Story does, where it streams the proxies automatically. And then finally, the full editing workflow in the cloud. And all of these solutions we can provide you today. Again, we'll just remind you, whether you're an existing EditShare customer or new to EditShare, we're making Flow available to all of you through to July 1st for free, the full complete version for that. But if you would also want to take part and use the cloud system, we've been ramping up our customer success team so that they can engage with you to scope out and get you hands-on. Some people may be a little bit uncomfortable. Oh, it's a cloud solution. I don't know how to use that. I don't know how to work with that. We're able to set up a very simple a trial system that will allow you to get your hands on it. We've had a number of customers do that and reach out to us over the last couple of weeks who've been trialing it. They've been amazed by how fast it is, how easy it is to get getting their data into the cloud using the Expanet technology. We were doing that over the weekend as well with our content that we had on premise. We want to get some of that into the cloud so we could be using it as well. So we really have tried out these solutions so that you've got some confidence that they will work. We didn't want to put anything in front of you that we weren't confident in working. So hopefully that's been a really useful session in terms of seeing these in reality. I know there's a few detailed questions that we've got. Some of them we might address now live in the Q&A, and others definitely will go through afterwards and give you answers on all of the things that you've been asking it. But I just hand back to Tracy just to see what we got from Q&A and any further thoughts.
Great. Thanks, guys. Andy, Stephen, fantastic job. Thanks for sharing so much with our attendees out there. I think we actually had benefit of seeing, well, we did a session this morning, so we were able to answer a lot of the questions kind of in stream, but there still are a few out there that we want to make sure that we cover. One, actually, we just covered the multi-cloud one. And we've covered, I think, ad nauseum, maybe not ad nauseum, the, kind of, can you get Flow? Can you get it if you're a customer, if you're not a customer, if you, are a part, have part of the solution or not, and you can definitely do that. I think one of the other things that was asked, Andy, if we go back to remote workflow, is, it was, the comment was, this is a great solution for remote workflow because many of the programs don't have access to audio. Can you explain if the sync is going to be a problem?
Oh, well, if we're talking about the Teradici or Nice DCV remote desktops, the sync is absolutely perfect. And you can scrub the audio timeline. It's very low latency. You can do, when you're editing, you're always looking for cut points and trying to squeeze the timeline cursor in between words, and that is not a problem at all.
Great. And I think there was another one, we'll talk a little flow related. I personally like this super cool use of flow for creating new sequences. So thank you very much. We think so too. But what if I have to revise existing edit?
So we're talking about, I don't know if we're talking about Flow Story or if you're working. So in Flow Story, you can always revise and edit. You can create multiple versions of things. If you have uploaded, yeah, I mean, sorry, that's basically where you're making the sequences. So yes, you can keep multiple versions. You do your save as.
Great. And then let's see, let's look through some others. We answered so many of these. So another one, what does it take to get a new application integrated into a Flow platform? For example, a color grading solution like Baselight or Nucoda or Scratch.
What does it take? It would be interesting to get some clarification. So integrated into Flow, like to have a plugin for Flow, I'm wondering.
We'll see. Hold that in your head for a few minutes, and we'll see if we get some. No, here you go.
But by the way, there's no reason why we couldn't work with an application like Baselight in the cloud or anywhere else, for that matter. Great. You know, it runs. I believe it runs on Linux, and you can have remote desktops to Linux. So as long as the version could run in the cloud and there's no specific hardware, there's no reason why it couldn't run.
So I think one of the other things that's been rumbling around out there is, and maybe this is kind of one of our last questions because it covers kind of a big topic, is how do I get started, and you know, how do I get help, you know, sizing this? Is it, you know, as big as a bread box or as big as a house? What are the steps that I need to go through, or that you can go through with me to make this happen, the full editing in the cloud?
Yeah, I sort of touched on that a little bit. So we have a customer success team. So if you reach out to your regional sales manager or through your channel, we can get you in touch with our team here, who've got a full process now in place to get you set up. We can show you another more detailed demonstration of the capabilities of a cloud platform beyond what you saw today with Andy. We can then set up an instance dedicated to you for a short period of time for you just to try it out, for you to get some media in, to make sure that you can do the things that you want to do. Say, for example, I think there was a question about, can you have you know, a range of third-party plugins? Well, we can give you a system. You can go and try those out. You can, if you're using a whole bunch of plugins into Adobe Premiere, you can go try them out and make sure that they're going to work in the cloud. We found that majority of plugins, you know, are generally going to work. There are a couple of things that, having spoken to AWS, there's a couple of ones which they've had a few challenges with, but the majority work really well. So you can go and try those things out. Make sure that it's going to fit for your workflow. We want you to be able to try these things out very easily, so we can stand up one of these systems for you. You can get your media in using something like Expert, and you can give it a try. And we've done this with a number of customers already, so we've got a really nice slick workflow for you to try that out. And then we can go through the standard kind of sizing exercise that we would do for our existing on-premise hardware-based solutions, but in the cloud. So we can talk to you about, okay, well, during this time or going forwards, how much media do you want to put into the cloud? How frequently are you going to be adding to the cloud? What's the resolution of that content? How much do you need online into an online store that you're able to do, you know, live editing off? How much of it do you want in a nearline or into a sort of an archive type of format? Because then we can size the system that way and hand off, you know, between an archive storage like S3 or Glacier or another archive solution, or back into our online EFS that's virtualized. So we can go through the same sort of process that we would do for selling an existing product, but we can do that with a cloud workflow. And we have a full way of calculating out then, okay, this is going to equal this amount of virtual machines in the cloud and the type of storage that you will need to back that up. And we've gone through right from very low resolution editing right through to it's super high-end stuff, so we can scale it out. And so we've got a whole way of calculating that and working with the customers. But really, we wanted to make sure people got hands-on with it, because there'll be a lot of questions. It's like, oh, well, can I do this thing? Well, let's help you try that out. Let's make sure that you can be confident in what this is going to do for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. So we are at the top of the hour, just about. I wanted to just take a couple minutes to couple of housekeeping items. One, please, we are going to share the video. We are going to share all of the Q&A, both from this morning in our previous session and this afternoon, back with you guys in the form of an FAQ, so that you can easily see questions that were asked and answered. You can actually ask additional ones if you want. We'll follow this up with a survey so that you can give us some feedback, say, this is what you like, this is what you don't like. We are really quite interested in other topics of conversation that you'd like to have. It's nice for us to talk to you. We'd like to talk back and share some stories with you and share experiences with you. So please do share with us the things that you'd like to talk about, and we can do that together. Some of us have a little bit of free time on our hands these days, with maybe no commutes and things like that. So if you find yourself with some extra hours and you want to learn a little bit more about EditShare and our offering in general, we do have EditShare Academy launched. So you can go to academy.editshare.com and you can get a good overview of our company and our products and how we engage with the market, and you can do that all for free and become a certified EditShare associate, which many of our customers and partners are already in that position. So we invite you to do that as well. And we really hope this has been a useful time for you. We appreciate that you've taken time out of your day when we're all busy. West Coasters, we won't stand between you and a cocktail and a nice dinner. And for our friends in Asia Pac, please have a great day. I don't know if Andy and Stephen, if you guys have any parting words.
I just want to say, we understand what people in production are going through, and we're thinking every day about how we can make the production experience better for people who find themselves having to work at home right now. And we've got your back. We know what it's like to be working at home. We're doing it ourselves, and we know how disruptive it can be, and how important it is to be out here talking about what the options are for continuing forward. And if any of you have ideas, I would just say, please get in touch with us too. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, in the first webinar, somebody came to us and talked to us about a Mac remote desktop application that we didn't know about. So we're a community, and when we share ideas, it helps us all. And that's what we're all about.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I mean, it's really great to meet people on these webinars. We were really hoping to meet a whole load of people at NAB. Unfortunately, that isn't the case, so we're trying to make up for that. I would have, loved to discuss, a number of these cloud topics with people. This is now an open forum for people to engage with us. Or if Brian wants to talk more about my XY microphone setup, thanks for that, Ryan, for spotting it. Maybe we could talk about that another day as well. So, but let's keep the conversation going. We want to be out there helping you and understanding what we have on offer, but also how we can just help you with your workflows.
Yeah, be on the lookout for the upcoming schedule. We'll publish it. We'll share it out with the community. I'm going to try to figure out next time how to turn everybody's video on and then do a big capture of everybody at the same time. There's got to be a way. We can do it in Zoom Town Hall, so we ought to be able to do it here. Anyway, thanks for your time, and we look forward to talking to you guys again the next time. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.